Hey everyone, it's Peter from Daydream Nation and welcoming back to the channel my friend Reed Little from the Contrarians. How are you, Reed?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you for the invite. You know, I love talking about Rainbow.
Absolutely, and so do I. We are going to talk about the eighth and final studio album of Ritchie Blackmore, Rainbow, and that is Stranger in Us All. We are going to talk about the songs, the performances, all things Ritchie Blackmore Rainbow. So, Reed Little, I'll throw it over to you straight off the bat. What was your first encounter with Stranger in Us All?
Well, I want to get this out of the way first because you've got the picture there behind your head. I love this album cover. I absolutely love it. He looks like a scarecrow with a guitar on him, and I think it's so awesome. So great
Yes,
album cover.
yeah,
Now,
agree.
as far as what I thought of the album, I completely missed this album when it came out. I think in the US it was released in 1995. Maybe it was very early 96, but it was right in that time. And at that time, there was no way traditional heavy rock was going to get any kind of traction in America. We're talking about grunge, alternative, the birth of new metal, like Korn is coming out with their first album at the end of 1995. Something like Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow wasn't even a blip on the radar. So I didn't find out that this album existed until sometime in the 21st century. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember I was like, oh, geez, Ritchie put out another album that I never even heard of. So I got it quite late, um, and I really enjoy it, but I almost never listen to it. And I have the same experience every time I put it in. I go, this album is fantastic. Why don't I listen to it more often? And then by the time I finish it, I'm so fatigued, so tired from listening to it. I'm like, this is why I don't listen to this album more often. And we can talk about that as we get through the songs. I will say, I generally love this album, but I find it fatiguing, and I think it's actually worse than the sum of its parts, which I'll describe more as we go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, my history with this album was that I knew it was there. I knew it got released, but I never bought it in the day. I bought it sometime afterwards because I was exploring other sort of genres of rock. And I can tell you in the day, it got minimal publicity. It got very little real estate in the record store. If you weren't a Rainbow fan, you'd probably blink and you'd miss. You wouldn't even know that there was an album that had come out. This was originally going to be a solo album, and somehow it morphed into Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. The Rainbow, the title, being more commercially viable than Ritchie Blackmore, which is like, I don't know about that. We can talk about that.
Right.
So I must have caught up with this album, purchasing it maybe 10 years after the fact. I sort of oscillate. I know that we did a show a couple of years ago called Best Song, Worst Song with Peter Jones on this
Right.
channel, and I wasn't very complimentary. But as we go into this show, I may have changed my opinion. I think this is it's an album that's very much out of time. So, what was happening in 1996 was clearly out of step with classic rock. And let's face it, bands like Rainbow and Deep Purple weren't alone. Classic rock was withering on the vine because of different sort of alternative rock was taking over. So, look, I think the way that we get to the nub of what we really think about this album, we'll go into the songs, but I do need to talk about the lineup. So, the lineup of this album is fronted by Doogie White, and Doogie has a little bit of 6 degrees of separation with the Rainbow family because he was originally the roadie for Whitesnake. So here's the vocals. Greg Smith's on bass and Paul Morris keyboards, and John O'Reilly was on drums. Now, John O'Reilly was the drummer on the record, but live, the tour that followed was Chuck Berge.
Yeah.
And you had additional musicians of Candice Knight as well. So why don't we start off with the first song on the album, and that is Wolf to the Moon. What do you think of this song?
So I think it's a great opener. With one exception, I how much I hate that "I Surrender" song. We went over that on a previous show. But with that exception, I think Ritchie had a very good ear for opening tracks. And I think this album is very side one loaded. I mean, I've only ever had it on CD, but I'm guessing if you split it half and half, that the tracks on side one are generally my favorite tracks. And it's very guitar forward. There's so much guitar. You can really see the emphasis on it was going to be Ritchie's solo album because Ritchie is all over it. He's doing multiple layers of guitar, which was not something he always did. He used to leave the keyboard, right, to provide the backup layers. And he would just kind of noodle around in the background. But now he's doing 3-4 tracks of guitar on each song, especially here at the opening. Doogie White, who I first saw, I want to say he was singing for Lynch Mob on a tour for George Lynch. He's a journeyman. He was making the rounds in the 90s of whatever kind of classic rock band needed a singer. And I think Doogie's an amazing vocalist. If he had been out in the new wave of British heavy metal, I think that he'd have been one of the classic singers. But he's, again, a victim of timing. In the mid-90s, people just didn't want that. So, but I think he sounds awesome. I think Ritchie sounds awesome. I think the drums are really boring. I actually kind of picture, I mean, they're very solid, but they're not very interesting. And I can really picture Ritchie pointing the finger at the drummer and saying, "Don't make it too busy. This is my album. This is about the guitar. You lay back and let me play." The bass is non-existent, and there's very little keyboards. So it's real guitar and vocal heavy. But I like it. I think the lyrics are interesting. It's about a werewolf, but it's also a song about being on the road. We know Ritchie liked lyrics about being on the road or cars, or maybe that was just Jolene Turner, but they like that imagery. And it fits right in.
Yeah, this album kind of has echoes of previous albums in Ritchie's past, whether it's Deep Purple, whether it's Rainbow. It's a cracking opening track, and yes, I agree with you. Anything that involves Ritchie, the first song is always a cracker. We should do a show about first songs on every Deep Purple Rainbow album because they're so stellar. Double tracking guitar. I think he started to bring double tracking guitar off the long-lived rock and roll album, Lady of the Lake. I can remember had a lot of double tracking, so he was starting to bring that into his repertoire. It's got a nimble guitar solo, this song. It's very neoclassical, tasty, melodic. Doogie White sings well. There's a bit of grit and it's good range, but I agree, the drums are boring. They're very clinical. It's almost like a click track. And this is my gripe with this album, that it's a classic rock album that perhaps I would have more enjoyed it if it was recorded analog, not digital. And I'll throw it to you straight off the bat. Is this sort of music better if it's recorded in that 70s style? Maybe classic rock is not meant for digital. I think it's just a little bit too clinical, a bit too sterile, that the bottom end and the drums.
Yes, and I think that leads us to some problems later too. But yeah, something a little warmer, a little more analog. I mean, in the mid 90s, they weren't yet to the point where they could make digital sound like analog. Now you really can't tell the difference. I mean, people say they can. I'm highly skeptical. If the producer knows what they're doing, they can make anything sound like anything else. But it is a little clinical. But it's not too spiky. Like you don't get all those real high transients that you sometimes get from a digital drumming. So that's okay. I like the sound of it. I think you made a very important point there. I have this in my own notes. Every song on this album reminds me of another song Ritchie had already recorded. And
Well,
I think if there's any one complaint, I actually have two complaints, but that's the complaint is you listen to it and go, there's nothing new, which I also think is a little unfair. You know, Ritchie had been recording for 35 years. I mean, how many new ideas is he going to have? But the album does feel a little bit of a rehash.
well, let's go to the next song, Cold Hearted Woman. It's got that sort of machine gun guitar riff that reminds me of like Desperate Heart, or if you know Stevie Nicks, Edge of 17, that real da 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 da. The keyboards are way back in the mix, and it's got a riff that reminds me of classic 70s Deep Purple. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's what I have in my notes. This song could have been on Stormbringer or Burn. He said and this is the type of song that Ritchie was complaining about at the time. And then he went and got Elf and did Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow and put out exactly that type of music anyway. And that's what this reminded me of, is that Mark III Deep Purple. And again, great parts. Doogie sounds awesome. I don't think the lyrics are anything particularly special, but his voice is very good. Ritchie's playing is amazing. The solo is fantastic. But somehow even those extra parts don't add up to a top flight song. It's good, but it's not like memorable. There's nothing that my mind really grabs onto and says this is going to be a classic.
I think the lack of a drummer in the class of a Cozy or an Ian Pace really lets this song down. It would be a notch above what it currently is if they had a drummer which was a little bit more, I hate to say this word, human, a little bit edgy, where you're listening to the bottom end and he puts a little fill in that you don't expect. To me, this is almost drum programming. It's click trackorama all the way through, and I really think this lets the album down. When I first heard this album, I just thought it was, oh, this is really 90s. It's state-of-the-art technology, but I can just see that, whatever they're doing, it seems to be very cookie cutter. And I know that Pat Reagan, probably with Ritchie Blackmore, because they're both the credited as the producers, were probably saying, okay, this is the sound of what's happening in rock. We need to follow it. I would have preferred it if they used something that was a little bit out of the box, wouldn't you?
Yes. I mean, I don't know what more to say about it. Yeah, and I hate to pick on the drummer because I'm notoriously not that much into the drums, but the drums are the weakest component of this album to me. The drums and generally the songwriting. And I don't know of a lot of other albums where I love the individual performances and yet don't really love the songs that much.
Well, I think that's very telling because you just said you don't really notice the drums, but on this album you do notice the drums.
Right.
And that's a major flaw. But look, I like Cold Hearted Woman, so I think so far I'm listening to this album, first two tracks, I like them. I don't mind them at all.
Yeah.
The third one, Hunting Humans, in brackets Insatiable. I reckon this is the most outlier song in the whole Rainbow catalogue. I cannot think of any song that sounds like this in the whole catalogue. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a strange one. And it's a song about a serial killer, which is very strange sonic or very strange lyrical territory for Ritchie. He was apparently just letting Doogie write whatever he wanted. I don't know, maybe Ritchie was all checked out on the lyrics. There's so much keyboard on this song. And it's interesting because by way of comparison, there's so much keyboard on this song that it reminds me that there was very little keyboard on the first two songs. And then all of a sudden, this song opens up with a lot of keyboard. And to me, on this album, the keyboard forward songs sound like they came off of Bent Out of Shape. Like very particularly, they have that bent out of shape sound. This song has some interesting things in it. I think that, there's not much of a riff. It's very spare, but Ritchie plays slide on it. He very rarely plays slide guitar, but he plays slide all over this song. It's got multiple guitar solos. A very short feature solo during the verse, but then he plays a solo over the outro as Doogie is singing out. So all of that is a very strange construction of a song for Rainbow. They just didn't arrange their songs like this.
I'm concerned by this time and by this song. If I don't hear a lot of guitar, I don't think he's engaged, because history shows when you don't hear a lot of Ritchie playing guitar, and listen to the Stormbringer album, that means that he's completely disengaged from the song. And I find that quite strange, where it is a solo album. So there's a school of thought where he's just said, Doogie, you just do your own thing and I'll just chime in and put a guitar part here and there. And, he's sold by what Doogie is, pitched to him, or he's completely disengaged. And maybe there's record company interference. They think, oh, this is hip and happening. This is a little bit more modern. This is more in step with what was happening in the 90s than being classic Rainbow. And that's why I say it's a completely outlier type of track. It's very much a mood piece, and Blackmore's providing these little stab notes, and the keyboard's providing the build-up into the chorus. He interjects with some riffage here and there. So I don't know. It's a school of thought. Do you think there may have been? Do you think there's a case of complete disengagement?
So, in this case, I don't actually think so. But that's from watching. I've watched a complete interview with Doogie White where he talks about the recording of this album. And it sounds very much like Ritchie was the same Ritchie he always was. He was playing practical jokes on people, putting recorders in their room to play ghost noises at night, and all of that Ritchie Blackmore kind of stuff. So I think he was there. He may have simply not been in touch with music anymore. And that's why there are so many callbacks on this album, is he didn't have anything really new to bring. But again, I do want to say, I think when he's playing, his playing is phenomenal. And this album has some of my favorite Ritchie Blackmore solos. He's so good. But the song construction doesn't match that.
Stand and Fight. What do you think of this song?
All right. I think this song is hilarious. It's a honky-tonk song. So we're going all the way back to the first Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow album that he's recording with Elf. And he's putting out honky-tonk and a freaking harmonica. I have so much difficulty picturing Ritchie Blackmore going to the producer and saying, I want harmonica on this song. Find me a harmonica player. And I don't remember the name of the guy who's credited playing harmonica on this track. But it's not a little harmonica. It's a lot of harmonica. He even gets a harmonica solo. So that's very strange for a Rainbow track. But for all of that, I mean, it's as honky-tonk rock and roll goes, it's fine. It's not a standout track other than the fact that it's got harmonica all over it.
I can imagine Jolene Turner singing this song. It's kind of got the sonics of that Rainbow era. It's a solid mid-tempo rock. It's more bluesy than a standard Rainbow song. And I do enjoy how it gets heavier, the drumming, the guitar lines, and there's a real cutting solo towards the end. I think my favorite bit of this song is the last quarter.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's sort of like a little bit Rainbow by the numbers, but I could really imagine Jolene Turner singing, slotting into this particular song. Ariel. So this was a single that was released off the album. What do you think of this one? Do you hear a little bit of Candace Knight, Blackmore's Night influence coming into the band? A bit of transitional warning sign?
So, yeah, I find this song, well, one, let me just say right up front, I love this song. This is, by a very wide margin, my favorite song on this album. It's one of the few songs where I think everything dials in. It's got a great riff. It's got amazing solos. It's got Doogie White's best vocal performance. That man had a set of pipes. and he must have been blowing out the microphone in the studio. He is just pushing so much air when they get to the high part at the end. The lyrics feel very Candace, and yet, at least on the Wikipedia page, because I was too lazy to go down and look at the liner notes in my actual CD, she doesn't have a writing credit on this. It's just Ritchie and Doogie. So, but I love this song. I think it's the most classic Rainbow song. The sound of it would fit right in on Rainbow Rising, with the main problem being it's a little too similar to Stargazer. I mean, you wouldn't want to have both of those songs on the same album, but I think it's classic Rainbow all the way and amazing performances. But I think the song, at least the longer cut, they also had a radio cut, but the long cut, that then after it gets to this really crescendo moment, then it drops way back down, and you've got, I presume, Candace in the background just singing Ariel over and over again, and Ritchie this little, Renaissance solo, which is about half volume, and I'm like, that's the wrong ending. After you reach this giant triumphant swell, then they just drop out, and the very ending of it leaves me dissatisfied. But the rest of the song I love.
Yeah, so it leaves you a bit high and dry. I'm getting a bit fatigued by the Egypto exploration of Ritchie, because every album since Stargazer, he explores the Egypto, and I think this is probably the most least successful. So I think this kind of echoes Strange Ways of House of Blue Light, Perfect Strangers with that guitar line. I don't think it's entirely memorable as the hook. I don't think the hook in the song is strong enough. Doogie sings really, really well, and he shows a great range, and he builds it up in the last verse crescendo. That's a huge tick. And Blackers does a great solo, but I'm getting a little bit fatigued. That's your word about, the Egypto. I mean, if I sort of said, okay, Ritchie's going to do a Rainbow album, you would almost anticipate that he's going to pull something out of the Stargazer universe, isn't it? Because that song was just so great.
Right.
And I think ever since, he's always laid down a track that echoes Stargazer, and he repeats it over and over again. But this one, I think, is probably the end of the line, the least successful. Okay, so we go to the next track on the album, and that is Too Late for Tears. What do you think of this song?
Okay, so this is what I think of as the back half of the album. Or the side B. I don't really know if this would have been side B. I mean, in '95, I would guess they didn't have an album pressing of this. It just would have been on CD. But this is a very Joe Lynn Turner era song. This is another one of those that would have fit right in on, Straight Between the Eyes or Difficult to Cure. And this is where we start to introduce what to me becomes the second problem on this album, and that is the lack of dynamic range. For the back half, with one exception that we'll talk about later, everything is mixed at basically the same volume. The guitars, the drums, the keyboard, the bass, everything is the vocals. It's all at the same level. It makes it very hard to pick out individual instruments, and it really this is where my fatigue starts setting in. Every song after this makes it harder to listen to the next song. So for all of that, I think it's a decent, again, if you like Joe Lynn Turner era Rainbow, then you should like this song. Blackmore does a little wah pedal on it, which was not a common thing that he did, although that's very much of his era. He even throws in a little sweet picking lick at the end of the song. Again, something else that he could do but rarely did. So it's got some nice pieces. I think it's a decent track, but it's going to be the first one on that slope of every song is harder for me to listen to.
Yeah, I think the last time he did a wah pedal, maybe Mark 1. Emerita, around that era. That's welcome that he plays that. Listen to Can't Happen Here after this song, and you'll hear similarities. I think he's been cribbing that song. interestingly. So I guess, he's written some great riffs. Why not crib himself? That's okay. Drums are far too up in the mix to the point that it's kind of a little annoying. I'm thinking that this band are a little bit too yes men. So I think Ritchie's best musical Rainbow is where you've got strong personalities in all aspects of the band that can challenge musical ideas. I think all the people on this are session musos, very competent, but they're not challenging him. And he needs to be challenged because we're starting to see a pattern in this album where it's echoing what he's done before, except for Hunting Humans, the Insatiable, that track, which is a little bit out of the box. He needs a Cozy Powell on the drums to say, hey, let's do this. He needs I don't know, who's a Don Airy or somebody strong on the keyboards, even though he used to terrorize keyboarders. So maybe that's not a good example. He needs a Jimmy Bain or a Bob Daisley or somebody in that band. Do you think the problems with this album is that my name is Ritchie Blackmore. It's a bit of the Yngwie Malmsteen, and you just follow what I do. There's not enough dynamic challenging within the band to make this an even better album.
Yeah, I think 100%. Nobody was hired to this band in order to tell Ritchie what they thought. they were there to do what he told them to do and go home.
And there lies the problem. There is a way to deliver a message politely and say, hey, Ritchie, what about we do it this way? Maybe they're just sitting on their hands on the stool and just not moving. That's the problem. Perhaps the biggest influence in this album was behind the scenes with Candace, because I'm hearing a lot of Blackmore night type of sonics that are creeping in. The acoustic, medieval, middle of the road, Euro influences in this band. The Renaissance.
We're hearing more very soon.
Yeah, you're hearing more. So look, I think I'm identifying a problem alert is he's not being challenged musically. And let's go into Black Masquerade.
So this is what I would call the first Blackmore's Night-esque kind of song. And just looking around the web, this appears to be one of the more popular tracks from this album. Doogie White was in a tribute band that was named after this song, and one place labeled it as a fan favorite, and they did it live. And I'm like, to me, it's a fine song. I don't dislike this song, but it doesn't have much personality to it. It's got good performances, but again, it's all wall of sound. Everything's at the same level, so it's so fatiguing to listen to. You get that Renaissance acoustic guitar that you were just talking about. So you get the acoustic guitar solo, and then a keyboard solo, and then a guitar solo. All of those pieces are great, but they add up to what I feel is a very stereotypical, what Martin Popoff calls castle rock kind of track. It's the type of thing that people make fun of Dio era heavy metal for, even though I don't think that deserves it. But again, I'm left thinking there's some fantastic pieces here, but I don't love this song.
Ritchie likes Europop. He loves ABBA. I'm even hearing echoes, a couple of degrees of separation in this song. I think this is the precursor to the years of Renaissance rock with Blackmore's Night. I am familiar with Blackmore's Night, and some of the up-tempo songs in Blackmore's Night are exactly like this song. So this is the bridge across. And I think because this album stiffed and he didn't have a very good tour, the tour of America was basically playing the clubs. There was arguments within the band about pay, and he had enough. I'll just take the misses and I'll get some musicians that are really into it. It's not in it for the money. We're doing it for the love, and goodbye rock and roll. So I think the seed is planted. I don't mind this song, but it's polite. It's music that my my late mum and grandma would probably enjoy. And rock and roll's got to be dirty and gritty. It's not dangerous enough. And the Ritchie I love is the Ritchie in the 70s where there's this edge of danger. To me, it's sort of almost retirement fund. Do you
Yeah.
think it's a little bit sedentary, a little bit sedate?
Yeah, to your point, back in the 70s, you never knew if you got too close to Ritchie's space on stage whether he would hit you with his guitar. Now you feel like he just, please, would you mind moving?
Exactly. Exactly. Silence. So I really think this is I don't like this track at all. And the thing that really irritates me is those horn stabs on the keyboards. The keyboards are really cheese. And we've spoken about this a fair bit in the 80s, that a lot of traditional bands that were, you'd associate their sound by the Hammond and that sort of that really 70s organ sound. When they went into the 80s, they were like a kid in a candy store and they would use all this new technology. But at the same time, they were sort of carbon dating their music to a particular moment of time that it just didn't really last. The sounds of the keyboards in this song really date it to a particular era. Actually, probably predated to the previous era, the 80s. What do you think?
So I have to say, I actually kind of like this song because it's so different than the song that we just finished off, Black Masquerade. So Silence is a shuffle. It's a blues shuffle. So very, very different. You are right, though. I have that in my notes. It's like, is that a horn section? Oh no, it's keyboards pretending to be a horn section. So that's very, very 80s in production style. It doesn't suit. I do like the fact that Ritchie could play the blues when he had the mind to do so, but he actually throws in some of his Renaissance licks into his blues soloing. To me, that gives it a little more interest. But again, these are just elements. They're interesting elements. They don't manage to make the song interesting. And by now, that that stupid everything at the same volume wall of sound is really starting to weigh on me.
Yeah. Do you think he may have just put his arm out on the mixing desk and say, you cannot move it any lower than the arm? Or got the ruler out, the red line? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think this song sounds a little bit like You Fool No One. With the harmonization with White and backing vocals with Greg Smith. Also, it sort of reminds me with some of the harmonies of the Hughes Turner project. What do you
Yeah.
think? Does that sort of echo?
I could see that. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, I could see that. And you do have Doogie is singing in a much more soulful style on this track. So
Mm,
again, I love his vocal. I love his versatility as a singer. Would have liked it in a better song.
yes. Now, the Hall of the Mountain King, I think this is where things fall down the castle steps, trip over themselves a little bit. And I oscillate on Ritchie when he really gets full on classical, like Difficult to Cure, whether I like it or not. What sort of the ledger do you fall on this particular song?
I don't like it. So here's the thing. Grieg's Hall of the Mountain King is one of the most metal classic tracks ever composed. It's awesome. Um, but to me, Savatage will always own the heavy metal version of Hall of the Mountain King. This song, you said it earlier, it's polite. It's bland. There's no energy to it. There's no danger to it. There's no metal. This is, you know what? Listening to an actual orchestra do this song would have been more metal than the way Ritchie records this song. He takes all of the teeth out of it. I'm not into it.
I go a little bit further than you. I think this is almost an unintentional parody This is the type of heavy metal that I don't like, where it gets a little bit Wolfskin and Viking. I know it's not Viking, but it just it's a little bit of a piss take. I know he sings with conviction, but it's just, I think the lyrics are a bit laughable. When it gets faster, the keyboard strings ramp up. It gets more histrionic. And to me, it just sounds like a parody of the worst side of heavy metal. I don't like it at all. And I think it is a really bad misstep. So, yeah, maybe that's just my views on this one. And then we finished the album with Still I'm Sad. So we've had 3 stabs at this. This is the third. So the first one was off the debut album. Then it was on stage. And then we have this version. My one word to you is why?
I'm right there with you. I know Ritchie loves Jeff Beck. He loves Jeff Beck. They were buds. He loved the Yardbirds. That was, Ritchie's jam from back in the 60s. But why this song of all of the songs? You've already recorded it twice, once instrumentally, which was boring, once with Dio singing vocals, which was much better. Why do it a third time? But that said, I love the opening to this song. Ritchie's just playing acoustic guitar, and he's playing with dynamics. He's loud, he's soft, he's aggressive, he's laid back. All of the dynamics that we're missing in the last 4 songs are in the intro to this song, and that makes me love it. But once you start into just the regular old rock and roll part where Doogie is singing the lyrics, all of that goes away. In this case, I really would have preferred an instrumental and just have Ritchie do the entire thing in the style of that opening, and I would have liked it much better.
I think it's Ritchie's goodbye to rock. It may be maybe I'm looking a little bit too deep, but I think he's just going full circle. So this song was recorded on his first album with Rainbow, and this is maybe the farewell to rock. Maybe he'd pre-planned. This is the end for me. I think the end of Purple left him scarred. He completely had enough, because there was a lot of I think there's a lot of stuff that was happening behind the scenes that you and I will not know. But for him to abandon the tour, write a note and just completely abandon the tour is major. I think the friction with Gillan was just so immense that really left a bad taste in his mouth. And, getting into, I think, meeting Candace and going, down a path. I think he had pre-planned that he was going to go into medieval rock, and this might have been the farewell album. And laying down that track was the way of his saying goodbye. Or you could look at the alternative side. I like this song so much, I want to introduce this to a newer audience with the hope that new fans would listen to that. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it's a good theory. I'd like it to be true. There's a poetry to it. We all like symmetry and we all like closure. So that makes you want it to be true. Whether it's actually true, only Ritchie could say.
Yeah, well, I think what really cast the final nail in the coffin for him and rock and Rainbow was that last tour, because I think the lack of success of the album, and also that tour of America where they're just doing clubs, like they were playing the the Rock and Roll Cafe, which probably only has a capacity of 500, 600 people. That would be it. So, which is a shame. Yeah. And then it was, and he did a little bit of a sort of a reunion of Rainbow, which I went over and saw at the O2 in London. I think it was about 10 years ago with Ronnie Romero. And basically the musicians in the band were his existing Blackmore Nights musos, but kind of amped up. That was kind of an opportunity. He could have got Doogie or Joe Lynn Turner and have a little bit of closure, but Ritchie just does it in his own way.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have the bonus track, the Japanese release bonus track, Emotional Crime?
no. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I thought it was so. I think there's almost always a reason that those bonus tracks are not included on the main album. Sometimes it's a good track, but it just doesn't fit in. In this case, Emotional Crime sounds so much like Bad Company that I had to double check that it wasn't a cover song. Doogie is channeling Paul Rogers as hard as he can. Ritchie is playing like Mick. I've forgotten his name, the guitar player from Bad Company, but it really does not sound like the rest of the album. It sounds like a Bad Company cover song, which is, I mean, fine, but it's very much a throwaway B-side.
Yes. Yes. So this album, I think it's got some positives. Ritchie plays really well. Doogie sings well. There are a handful of tracks that I think are really, really decent. But I think the production, the bottom end, some of the song arrangements, and some of the songs per se are on the negative side of the ledger. So I'd probably give this a 5 or a 6. I don't think it's the strongest album in the Rainbow discography. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, I fall along very similar lines. Like I said, I love the way Ritchie plays on it. I think if you're a guitar player and you just want to listen to great guitar, you can listen to this album and it's got phenomenal guitar on it. But if you want great songs, this is not a good album for that.
Thank you, Reed. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll plot offline what our next show is. But look, don't get us wrong. We love Rainbow, but we just call it as we see it, and with these retrospective record reviews. So there's still a lot to enjoy on this album. Do check it out, and we love reading your comments. Provide it, good, bad, or indifferent. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation, and see you soon, Reed, on a show in 2026 and beyond. All the best. Cheers.
Cheers,
See ya.
Peter.